Hello everybody, good morning. Jesus was a great storyteller. We've spoken about that the last two mornings. And there's one story that I think a lot of people have quite deliberately avoided. Or if they've looked at it, they've focused on it and concentrated on what is a more peripheral issue than the main point of the parable. Because the main point kind of makes us a little uncomfortable. What story am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about the story of the rich man and Lazarus. And Jesus tells the story. And basically the story is this. There was this very, very wealthy man who wore very fine clothing. It was all brand names. He wore purple and it was only, whatever name people with money buy these days. And he also ate well. In fact, every day he ate scrumptiously, more than he needed. And he was a well-to-do person. And you think, well, there's nothing wrong with that. If you've got the means to be able to live that way, then so be it. And to a certain extent, that is true. To a certain extent. The only trouble was this, that outside this man's property, every day, there was a very poor man who had nothing. His name was Lazarus, not Lazarus who was raised from the dead, but another Lazarus. And every day, his friends would just dump him on the ground. And he was so weak that the dogs used to come and lick his wounds. His body was full of ulcers. And the only food that he got was the crumbs that fell from the table of the rich man. That was the sum total of what this poor man received from the rich man. Well, you know what happens next. You know the story. The two men die. And Lazarus, the poor man, goes into the presence of Abraham, which is basically a way of saying the presence of God. And there he is looked after. His fortunes have turned around. He's happy. He is at peace. The rich man dies, and sadly he does not land up in a good place. And he looks over the chasm that separates these two places, and he shouts to Abraham, and he says, Abraham, please ask Lazarus to come over here with some water. I just want to dip my tongue, because where I am is extremely hot. And Abraham says, no, you've had your time. You closed your heart to the poor, and now it's Lazarus's time. And then the rich man says, well, Abraham, go and tell Lazarus to get back to earth and tell my brothers, because I don't want them to experience what I'm experiencing now. Go and warn them. And Abraham says, listen, they're not going to listen to Lazarus, believe me. So that's the story. And the way most people look at that story is to focus less upon the contrast between a man with so much and a poor man with so little, but rather they speak about what it teaches us about the afterlife, that we recognize one another, and we go off on these paths and we forget, because I think the main point of that parable makes us uncomfortable. It really does. I mean, the other day, Thursday, when it was pouring, I heard my doorbell ring, and I went out. It was cold, I thought, who's going to be troubling us at this time of the day? And there was a very poor man there, thin, pencil thin. He was cold, and he was in distress. Now, I know we're told in this day and age, please, you mustn't give to people who up and down the streets, and there's a genuineness about that concern. But there was no way, absolutely no way, that one could look at a man like that, so desperate, with such a helpless look in his face, and just tell him, no, sorry, I can't help you. The Word of God was spoken into my heart so powerfully. Now, I did something, and the details of which I needn't go into. But an hour and a half later, that poor man was a lot happier than when he first knocked on my door. We can't do everything, but we can do something. Now I know up at the church we've had soup kitchens, although because of the lockdown restrictions, we haven't been able, those soup kitchens haven't been able to operate. But for me, that story of the rich man and Lazarus is something along these lines. Do not think that because of the times in which we are living, you cannot help the needy. Think a little bit out of the box. I know folk who, when they get up in the morning, have a loaf of bread, and they cut that loaf of bread and they put peanut butter on it, and they pack it nicely in a little plastic packet, and they put it into their bags. They don't know who they're going to give it to specifically, but they know that during the course of their day, there are going to be people that they will meet, people that they will see. And it's so easy simply just to put your hand into your bag and give somebody 2 sandwiches in a small cellophane packet. Maybe that's what Jesus asks of us. We may not be able to change the whole direction of South Africa, but we can be salt, we can be light, we can do little things day by day. Now I know I'm going on a little bit longer than usual, but I love the story of Martin of Tours, medieval soldier come saint, a very committed Christian. He was a very brave soldier. On one occasion, he came across a beggar, a man in deep distress. And Martin of Tours, on his horse, got up and went to the man. And he took off his soldier's tunic, and he tore it in half, and he gave one half to this poor beggar, and he kept the other half for himself. That night, Martin of Tours had a dream. And in his dream, he sees Jesus wearing the half of the tunic that he had given to the beggar. And the angels ask Jesus, where on earth did he get that garment that he was wearing? And Jesus said, I got it from my servant, Martin. God be with you.